My name is Thinley Dorj. Welcome to the Bhutan Storytelling Series, and I'm going to read you a story called Prince Vikranta, and it's from this book called Bhutanese Folktales from the East and the South by Mr. Gopilal Acharya. Prince Vikranta. A long time ago, a king was banished from his country for 12 years. He had a son named Vikranta, who was 17 years old when his father was forced into exile. The royal entourage started for a deep forest. The forest was called Rani Ban, meaning Queen Forest, because of its enormity and sacredness. It was believed to be a divine forest. At the same time, it was such a massive and dangerous forest that the very thought of it instilled fear. But the king had resolved to spend his exile in it. His entourage kept on walking until the sun nearly disappeared into the distant horizon. Finally, they came upon a lake with a big cave at its extreme end. The king's party decided not to go any further, but spend the night there. Everyone was tired and soon fell fast asleep. But the king stayed awake, contemplating his exile, when he heard some rustling sound amid oak leaves collected to use as bedding. The sound came from the side where the prince was asleep. Looking closely, the king saw a big cobra about to bite his son. The king was afraid that it would take away the life of his only son. So he pleaded, "Please, don't bite my son. He is to be enthroned as the king on our return." The snake replied, "I will not bite your son, but you must obey the orders of my king and queen, and let me have your son for 12 years until your exile is over." The king was taken aback, but the cobra mentioned about his exile. This was not an ordinary snake, and by him mentioning his king and queen, there was something in it. So the king asked the cobra who his king and queen were and why they wanted his son. The cobra said, "My king is Nagraja and my queen is Nagrani. They live a day's journey north of here. I am their bodyguard sent to fetch your son. I have no idea as to why they want your son." Now the king had to decide what to do. His son's life was at stake. With great reluctance, he accepted the cobra's offer and promised that his son would be prepared to leave the next morning. The cobra then gave the direction of his king's palace and left. In the morning, the king woke up disheartened. He spoke to his son in a sad voice. "Listen, Vikranta, you are to go to the palace of the Nagraja." Then he told his son what had happened during the night and said, "You shall take my horse and go. Obey what you are instructed to do. Exactly in 12 years, as the cobra said, you will be freed, and by that time, my exile will be over. Then we shall all return home together." The prince promised to abide by his father's advice. He started off to the north. By evening, as the sun set and twilight began to diffuse across the horizon, he reached the lake, just as directed by the cobra. He tied his horse to a plant which was used by people as broom and said, "Listen, my good horse, you will not go away until I return, and this broom plant shall provide you grass to eat. You will wait here for 12 years without stirring to breathe. But in case I am late by a second, you may return to my father." Then he said to the broom plant, "Dearest plant, please provide every day your green grass to my horse. I shall return in exactly 12 years. In case I am late even by a moment, you may wither so that my horse goes away." Saying thus, he went to the lake that was shining brightly in the twilight. He paused for a moment, looked back at his horse, prayed for God's help, and dived directly into the deepest part of the lake. Down he went, deeper and deeper, until he reached the bottom. He was greatly surprised to see in front of him, a few yards away, one of the most magnificent palaces. His own father's palace was certainly not as fine as this. He thought that it must be the palace of the Nag Raja. He went into it straight away. An underground paradise, he thought to himself. No sooner did the Nag Raja see Vikranta than he asked the nymphs to stop chanting and came forward to welcome the boy to his palace. "Welcome, my valorous son," said the king, embracing Vikranta. At that, the Nagrani shed some tears, which dampened her exquisite cheeks. After they had dined, the king took Vikranta to his private room and told him, "Vikranta, you are my human reincarnation. You may not believe me, as the surprise on your face shows, but it is true. So be not benumbed. That is why I called you here. I want you to marry a princess who lives 100 miles from here with her father. But remember, her father is the king of the demons. He eats and drinks human flesh and blood. Now you must go and capture the princess at any cost, even at the risk of your own life. I am sure that you will not fail. You will certainly bring the beautiful princess, our daughter-in-law, from her devilish father." With this, the king stopped speaking. Prince Vikranta bowed in deep respect and set out at once for the demon's palace. He went on and was crossing a river when he saw a large heap of ants helplessly drowning in the river. He felt sorry and saved them by safely guiding them to land. The ants were deeply touched by Vikranta's kindness. The ant king came forward to thank him. He said, "Whoever you are, though by handsome features and humane heart you could only be a benevolent prince, we thank you for saving our tiny lives. In return, we have nothing worth presenting to you except to ask you to remember us if you happen to be in trouble where we little ones may be of some use." The prince promised to remember them and continued on his journey. No sooner had he crossed the river and entered the jungle than he saw that the western part of the forest was on fire. The flames were leaping from all directions, and there in the middle he saw a great number of mice about to be devoured by the hungry fire. When they saw the prince, they all shouted in their feeble voices, "Help! Please help!" So the prince tied up his shirt like a bag, attached it to a long pole, and stretched it out to the mice in the fire. They scampered into the shirt bag and were saved from being roasted alive. The Mouse King came forward and said, "Indeed, you are the Son of God sent to save us. You have done so much, but we poor, wretched, and helpless creatures have nothing worth presenting to you for your kindness, except to thank you from the depths of our tiny hearts. Please remember us if you happen to be in any kind of trouble where we might be of use." The prince promised to remember them and continued on his journey. It was almost evening when he came across a village near a paddy field. Past the paddy field, past the farmer ploughing enthusiastically, and not far away, he saw another farmer who was continuously urinating to irrigate the soil. This was really an amazing scene for the prince. He thought that since he was alone, why not ask the man to accompany him? Perhaps his miracle might be of use to him. Vikranta introduced himself to the farmer, told the purpose of his journey, and asked if he would accompany him. "Why not?" said the farmer. "I am tired of farming and I want to have adventures like you. But promise me, if you succeed in your plan, you shall make me your minister." "Two is better than one," said the prince. "Why then, come on." They marched on together, only to be stopped by a man who was a thief by profession, lived in a cave, cooked for 12 continuous years, and ate whatever he cooked in a single gulp. The prince was again astonished, thinking that perhaps this man could also be of use to him. So he introduced himself and asked the man to join them. "Why not?" said the man. "Promise me that you will feed me. You see, ever since I was born, I have never had enough to eat." "Well, well," he said, "feed me and I shall readily follow you." "Three is better than two," said the prince. "Why then, come on." So the three of them made their journey. Late in the following evening, they reached their destination. The prince was once more flabbergasted to see the massive size and beauty of the demon's palace. He could not believe that a devil lived here in such a wonderful palace, like a rose with a serpent beneath it. It was a 9-storied palace, square-shaped, with a water fountain in each corner and a lovely cedar tree in the main courtyard. Meanwhile, the Nag Raja had already prophesied to the demon's daughter that such and such a prince was coming to court her, and that she must consent, for this was the will of God. She had agreed, and as soon as she sensed the presence of the three men in the palace, she immediately came down to the gate to greet them. The prince nearly fainted upon seeing such a beautiful princess, like a lake burning with suffused light, like a everlasting snow-capped mountains, like the changes of season. She was matchless. She warned them that if her father saw them, they would not be spared. She asked them to hide that night and to elope the following morning when he left for hunting. They were hidden in a big cauldron inside the store. But there was no escape from the demon's grip. The moment he entered his home at nightfall, he sniffed around his palace in the direction of the store and shouted in a thundering voice, Smell of human body! I shall drink his blood and gnaw his delicious bones. Say quickly, who is here in my house?" The princess revealed the presence only of the prince. She told her father why he had come. She pleaded, "If you want to give your daughter happiness, then please let me marry him." Her father consented to the marriage on the condition that the prince must complete 3 tests. He told her what the tests were, and then the prince was ushered in front of the demon. He roared, "So you are the gallant young man who has captured my daughter's heart. You may marry her if you pass the tests which I shall hold to try your valor and intellect." Actually, the tests were there to find fault with the prince, make him fail, and then the demon would have his way with him, perhaps a nice meal. The prince boldly agreed, and the first test began. The young prince was given a silver pail and asked to go and milk the cow that had not given birth for 12 years. The cow was dangerous, but the princess knew of this and had secretly passed a golden ring to the prince, saying that before he approached the cow, he should wear it on his middle finger. Then he would succeed. When he first approached the cow, it growled in rage. Then he took out the ring and put it on his middle finger. Suddenly the milking cow was as easy as drinking a cup of cool water in a scorching desert. He brought the milk back and reported to the demon. But the first test was not yet over. The milk was poured into a bowl full to the brim, and the prince was asked to carry it to the topmost tower of the palace and bring it back. However, not even a drop should be spilt. The prince took the test and at last reached the topmost floor. From here he could view his father's own palace back home. Such was the height of the demon's palace. Suddenly the thought of his father in exile came to his mind, and the sight of his poor mother flashed across his memory. In no time his eyes were damp and a drop of tear fell down. He failed! Now I shall gnaw his bones and drink his blood and devour his flesh, said the demon as soon as he saw the drop falling down the tower. No, father, no, it is not the milk drop, it is the teardrop, said the princess. He went to see and indeed found that it was a teardrop. The prince safely climbed down again and thus passed his first test. Now the second test, said the devil. A sack each of paddy, maize, buckwheat, mustard, and barley was mixed thoroughly, and the devil ordered, "Separate these before the cock crows tomorrow morning." The prince was aghast. How on earth was he to do that? And that too by the dawn of the following day. His spirit was low and prepared himself to be the devil's breakfast when suddenly he remembered his little friends, the ants, whom he had saved from drowning. In no time the ants of the region gathered in front of the prince. He was overjoyed and addressed them. "My dearest little friends, the time has now come for you to save my life. Yes, you alone can save me and make me achieve my dreams of marrying the fair princess of the demon." He then told them of his difficult task. "Don't worry, great prince," said the ant king. "You shall marry her. Think that you have qualified this test too. Just go and have a nice nap and the work will be done." As promised, when the rooster sounded the clock in the morning, every grain lay separated. The demon was astonished. He gnashed his teeth and said, "Now the third test. Tonight you must build the replica of my palace." The prince was worried. How could it be done? Then he remembered those little mice. In no time they appeared with all their kith and kin in front of the prince. "How nice of you all to come at this perilous moment of my life. I thank you all," said the prince. He told them of the task that was impossible for him to accomplish. "What are we here for?" asked the king of mice. "Now, gallant prince, you must go rest, and the replica shall be erected by dawn tomorrow." When dawn arrived, there it was. This was amazing, thought the prince. A perfect replica of the demon's palace. "You may marry my daughter. She is yours, truly yours," declared the demon when he saw it. But remember, he continued, I shall cook for a party of 12,000 guests. You must invite enough guests to eat it all. This was not a problem. Opening the lid of the cauldron in the storeroom would solve it. The feast was ready. The prince and the princess were seated, prepared to take on the holy vows, binding their souls together for eternity. But as the ceremony was completed, no guest had arrived, except one man who stood quietly watching. Is this all you have invited? Roared the demon. Now I shall have you, he said, flashing his eyes. Wait and see, said the prince calmly. Here is my guest, and he shall eat all. Ah, this is your joke, sneered the devil, as the feast was laid out. But for a man who cooked for 12 years and ate it all with one gulp, this feast was nothing. Now, said the single guest after he had eaten it all, down to the tiniest crumb, what more am I to eat? I am very hungry. Shall I eat the pots and pans? Or shall I eat the hearth and the wood? The devil shook in shock and begged forgiveness for underestimating the guest. Please, whatever you are, please don't ruin me any further. The prince and the princess were married. They were to leave for the Nagraja's palace in the morning. Meanwhile, they retired for the night. The devil then secretly lighted a big fire beneath the bed. Aha, the demon thought, this is my ultimate success. But as soon as the prince was conscious of what was happening, he called his farmer friend. The farmer friend responded immediately and doused the fire with his urine. At that, the demon fainted away. The very next moment, they set off with the princess' two indispensable friends. The following evening, they entered the Nagraja's palace. Both the Nagraja and the Nagrani were overjoyed to see them. A great feast was held, and the couple presented with a bag full of precious gems as a bridal gift. They were blessed for a happy and long life. From there, the prince set off to return to his country, emerging from the lake to the lighted world. He immediately went to find his horse. It was just an hour short of 12 years. The rope that he had used to tie his horse was about to break. The last stem of the broom grass plant was about to wither. He thanked the Almighty that all had come out for good and for his good fortune. Then he rode away with his fair lady to meet his father. The king, his father, after completing his exile, was also returning home. And they lived happily together ever after. The end.